Martha Wilson, a resilient 68-year-old widow, faces betrayal when her daughter Rebecca and son-in-law Daniel pressure her to sell her beloved home for their real estate ambitions. As a blizzard traps them together, tensions flare, revealing their plan to declare Martha incompetent to seize her property, including a valuable lakefront cabin. Armed with legal protections and newfound resolve, Martha confronts their manipulations, uncovering Gerald's hidden letter that challenges Rebecca's priorities. Will Martha reclaim her autonomy and rebuild trust with her daughter? Or will their fractured bond collapse under the weight of greed? The storm clears, but the truth awaits. If Martha's journey of resilience touched you, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Share where you're tuning in from in the comments and don't miss tomorrow's special tale. Your support means the world. Click that button and join our community to keep these stories coming. They say blood runs thicker than water, but when my own daughter slammed the door in my face, leaving me standing in a swirling blizzard, I learned that family bonds can shatter like brittle glass. The sting of her rejection cut deeper than the icy wind, and she didn't even know the keys to their coveted vacation home were still tucked inside my purse. That moment marked the beginning of a journey from shivering in my car during the worst snowstorm in decades to reclaiming my dignity and teaching my ungrateful family a lesson they'd never forget. My name is Martha Wilson, and at 68, I never imagined I'd be starting over. For 43 years, I poured my heart into being a devoted wife and mother. After my husband Gerald passed away 5 years ago, I clung to the hope that my daughter Rebecca would be my anchor. Instead, I discovered how quickly decades of love could be swept aside when money and convenience entered the equation. Last December, as the first snowflakes drifted past my kitchen window, I was stirring a pot of homemade chicken soup, Rebecca's favorite since she was a little girl. The familiar act of cooking for her warmed me, a small ritual that connected me to the days when she'd sit at this same table, giggling over a bowl of soup. My phone buzzed, jarring me from my thoughts. A text from Rebecca. "Mom, Daniel and I need to talk to you. Coming over in 20. No warmth, no explanation, just the curt tone she'd adopted since marrying Daniel Pierce 3 years ago. My heart fluttered with a mix of hope and unease. Maybe they had good news. Maybe at 37, Rebecca was finally ready to tell me about a grandchild. She'd been so consumed by her career at Daniel's real estate firm, but lately she'd hinted at rethinking their family plans. I set the table for 3, adding a pinch more salt to the soup and pulling a golden loaf of sourdough from the oven, its aroma filling the kitchen with memories of happier times. The front door swung open, letting in a gust of frigid air. Rebecca stepped inside, peeling off her designer boots with the precision of someone who never let a speck of dirt linger. Daniel followed, his tall frame wrapped in a cashmere overcoat that screamed wealth, likely worth more than my monthly Social Security check. Their faces were blank, devoid of the smiles I'd hoped to see. "Mom," Rebecca said, her voice flat, ignoring the steaming pot and carefully set table, "we need to discuss your living situation." My stomach twisted, but I gestured toward the kitchen. "Let's talk over lunch. I made your favorite." Daniel glanced at his watch, his expression impatient. "Actually, we can't stay. We have a meeting with investors in an hour. This won't take long." His words sent a chill through me, sharper than the winter wind rattling the windows. I sank to the edge of my chair, hands clasped tightly in my lap, feeling like a child waiting a scolding. Rebecca took a deep breath, her eyes avoiding mine. "Mom, we think it's time you downsize. This house is too big for you alone. And frankly, the maintenance is becoming an issue." I glanced around my modest 3-bedroom home, the same one where I'd raised Rebecca, where I'd held Gerald's hand through his final days. The paint was peeling in a few corners, and the kitchen hadn't been updated since the 90s, but it was spotless. I'd always been meticulous, tending to every creak and crack with care. "What issues?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. Daniel pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos with the efficiency of a man used to getting his way. "The gutters are sagging on the east side, the driveway needs resurfacing, the landscaping's overgrown." He thrust the phone toward me, displaying close-ups of flaws so minor I hadn't noticed them. My voice trembled. "I can take care of those things. Gerald left enough for repairs." For a fleeting moment, Rebecca's face softened, a glimpse of the daughter I'd raised. Mom, it's not just the repairs. We're worried about you here alone, especially with winter coming. Remember last year when you slipped on the ice? It was a minor fall while carrying groceries, leaving only a bruised hip, but they'd latched onto it like evidence of my frailty. Daniel cut in, his tone brisk. We've found the perfect solution. Morningside Village. It's a wonderful senior community with activities, dining, and medical care on site. Rebecca's voice brightened, but it felt rehearsed. You'll make friends your age, Mom. No more worrying about shoveling snow or fixing things. I shook my head, my voice barely above a whisper. But I like taking care of my home. I have friends here, my garden club, my church group. Daniel checked his watch again, his impatience palpable. Martha, be practical. You're getting older. This neighborhood's changing. Younger families moving in, property values fluctuating. Selling now makes financial sense. The truth slipped out like a blade. This wasn't about my well-being. It was about my property. My nearly 1-acre lot, one of the largest in a neighborhood suddenly deemed desirable, was the real prize. Rebecca pulled out a glossy brochure for Morningside Village. We've scheduled a tour for tomorrow, just a look. No pressure. But the pressure was suffocating, radiating from them like heat from a furnace. My hands trembled as I took the brochure. Daniel added with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We've had Thompson Realty evaluate your home. Preliminary estimate is around $425,000. After Morningside's entrance fee, you'd have a nice nest egg. $425,000. They'd appraised my life's foundation without asking me, planned my future as if I were a child. I need time to think, I managed to say, my voice barely steady. Rebecca stood, mimicking Daniel's habit of checking her watch. Of course, Mom, sleep on it. We'll pick you up at 10 for the tour. They left without a hug, without acknowledging the soup or bread, without asking how I felt. I sat alone at my kitchen table, the snow falling heavier outside, my heart cracking under the weight of their indifference. The Morningside Village tour was a sterile blur of beige walls and cookie-cutter apartments. The residents drifted through the community rooms like ghosts, their smiles vacant, their lives reduced to scheduled activities. The air smelled of disinfectant, thinly veiled by artificial florals. The deluxe one-bedroom they showed me was half the size of my master bedroom, a box to store an old woman in. The admissions director beamed. The waiting list is typically 6 months, but we've had a cancellation. This unit could be yours next month. Rebecca squeezed my arm, her voice dripping with false enthusiasm. Isn't that lucky, Mom? Perfect timing. Perfect for whom, I thought, my chest tightening with resentment. That evening, they invited me to their sleek downtown condo for dinner. A rare gesture. Over a lavish meal they barely touched, they laid out their plan, list my house immediately, move to Morningside within 30 days, and sell most of my outdated furniture. Daniel swirled an expensive scotch in a crystal glass, his tone casual. We're thinking of buying your property ourselves. As an investment, the lot has potential for development. My breath caught. Development? You mean tearing down my home? Rebecca patted my hand, her touch cold. Daniel's company is exploring luxury duplexes in established neighborhoods. Your lot is ideal. Large, corner location, mature trees. I stared at them, my voice shaking. You want to profit from my home? Rebecca sighed, her patience thinning. Mom, we're helping you. Real estate is just business. You taught me to be practical. I had taught her many things. Kindness, gratitude, respect. But those lessons seemed buried under her ambition. For 2 weeks, I endured their relentless calls about listings, moving companies, and what I really needed to keep. I felt like a cornered animal, hounds closing in. One snowy Friday morning, Rebecca arrived unannounced, armed with empty boxes and color-coded stickers. Green for Morningside, yellow for storage, red for donation, blue for selling, she explained, slapping a red sticker on the antique sideboard Gerald had restored for our 25th anniversary. Stop, I said, my voice firm for the first time. I haven't agreed to any of this. Rebecca froze, stickers in hand. Mom, we've been over this. The Morningside contract needs to be signed by Monday to secure your spot. I'm not signing anything. Her face hardened. You're being irrational. This is the best option for everyone. For everyone or for your development plans? I shot back. Her eyes flashed. That's unfair. We're trying to take care of you before you become a burden. The word hit like a slap. Burden. After decades of love and sacrifice, I was a burden. I think you should leave, I said, my voice quiet but steady. Mom, please. Go, Rebecca. She gathered her boxes, muttering about stubborn old people as she left. For the first time, I locked the door behind her. That night, sleep eluded me. The wind howled around my house, my home, where every corner held memories of Gerald's laughter, Rebecca's childhood. I thought about the property's true worth, not in dollars, but in history. Then I remembered something buried in Gerald's office. In his desk's bottom drawer, beneath old insurance policies, I found a leather portfolio labeled Investments in Properties. Inside was the deed to a lakefront cabin in the Adirondacks, inherited from Gerald's uncle in the 1980s. We'd visited when Rebecca was young, but after buying a closer vacation home, we'd rented it out. The income was modest, reinvested per Gerald's wishes. A recent tax assessment caught my eye. The cabin's land, now surrounded by luxury developments, was worth over $2 million. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't destitute. I wasn't at their mercy. With trembling hands, I called my sister-in-law, Helen, a retired real estate attorney. Martha, it's nearly midnight, she said, her voice thick with sleep. Is everything okay? I need your help, I whispered, and I need this to stay between us. The next morning, a blizzard loomed, snow piling up as weather alerts warned of worsening conditions. I was organizing paperwork when Rebecca called. Mom, Daniel and I are coming over. We need to finalize the Morningside paperwork today. Have your checkbook ready. There's a blizzard warning, I protested. It's just snow, she snapped, hanging up. Timing was everything. Helen and I had worked until 3 a.m. preparing my response. When Rebecca and Daniel arrived, briefcase in hand, I met them at the door, refusing to let them in. I've made my decision, I said, handing Rebecca an envelope. She opened it, her brow furrowing as she read the letter inside. What is this? My formal notice that I'm not selling my home or moving to Morningside. I've consulted legal counsel and know my rights. Daniel peered over her shoulder. Legal counsel? Martha, that's unnecessary. We're family. Yes, family, I said, which is why I'm shocked you'd pressure me out of my home for your development project without disclosing your financial interest. Rebecca's face flushed. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, you found a naive old woman you thought you could manipulate for profit. I may be older, but I'm not stupid. Daniel's composure cracked. This attitude isn't helpful. We're looking out for you. No, you're looking out for your balance sheet. Unless you're here to visit with genuine concern, leave. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. You've been talking to Helen, haven't you? She's always been jealous of our success. Snow swirled around us, the cold biting. Mom, you're making a huge mistake, Rebecca said. That Morningside apartment won't be available again. Don't come crying to us when you change your mind. I won't, I said. Daniel glanced at his phone. Weather's getting worse. Let's go, Rebecca. He turned to me. Martha, when you reconsider, and you will, our offer stands, though the terms may change. Rebecca paused. By the way, we're going to Crescent Lake this weekend for a business retreat. At least some of us are thinking about the future. Crescent Lake, next to my Adirondack property. The irony nearly made me smile. Drive safely, I said, closing the door. As they drove off, arguing in their SUV, the snow thickened, visibility fading. I should have felt triumphant, but my heart ached. When had Rebecca become so cold, so driven by money over love? The blizzard worsened, with 50 miles per hour gusts and snow piling up at 2 inches an hour. As I made tea, my phone rang. An unknown number. Mrs. Wilson, this is Officer Diaz with State Highway Patrol. Your daughter, Rebecca Pierce, listed you as her emergency contact. There's been an accident. My heart stopped. Black ice on Route 87. Their vehicle slid off the road. No serious injuries, but their car's undrivable. They're at our station in Millbrook, but we're closing due to the storm. They need someone to pick them up. I'll come, I said, no hesitation. The drive was harrowing, my old Subaru battling snowdrifts. Twice I nearly turned back, but the thought of Rebecca stranded kept me going. At the Millbrook station, Rebecca and Daniel looked shaken. Daniel with a bandaged cut, Rebecca with a wrapped wrist. Neither seemed happy to see me. "Your mother drove through this to get you," Officer Diaz said. "Lucky to have family like that." Rebecca mumbled a thank you, her eyes averted. The drive back was tense, their silence heavy. "We'll never make Crescent Lake tonight," Daniel sweat, breaking the quiet. "You can stay with me," I offered. "Wait out the storm." Becca's silence screamed her reluctance, but they had no choice. I prepared the guest room, served soup and sandwiches, and gave Daniel some of Gerald's clothes. They accepted my hospitality with stiff politeness, retreating to the guest room after eating, the door closing like a wall between us. I sat in my living room, watching the snow erase the world outside, wondering if anything could bridge the chasm between me and my daughter. At midnight, their hushed, angry voices drifted from the guest room. "A complete disaster," Daniel snapped. "The investors expected us tonight. Now Marshall's group will get the first shot." "It's not my fault the car skidded," Rebecca retorted. "Your fancy tires are useless in snow. Can we focus on the problem? We're stuck in your mother's house, 30 miles from the biggest presentation of the year, in a blizzard." Their voices faded and I stepped away, my heart heavy with the realization that even in crisis, their priorities lay elsewhere. I stepped back from the hallway, my footsteps soft against the hardwood floor, unwilling to linger and overhear more of their heated whispers. Rebecca and Daniel's voices carried a sharp edge, their frustration palpable as they lamented a missed business opportunity that seemed to weigh heavier on their minds than the near disaster they'd narrowly escaped. A car accident in a blizzard, tires skidding on black ice, the crunch of metal narrowly avoided, should have shaken them to their core, but instead their thoughts were consumed by contracts and investors. I felt a pang of disappointment, a quiet ache in my chest, as I wondered when my daughter had begun to prioritize deals over survival, ambition over gratitude. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows, bouncing off 3 feet of untouched snow that blanketed the world outside. It was beautiful, almost blinding, but the beauty came with a cost. Roads were impassable, power lines sagged under the weight of ice across the county, and we were stranded, cut off from the outside world for at least another day. Over a breakfast table, heavy with tension, Rebecca finally broke the silence. Her voice clipped but direct. "Mom, I need to borrow your car. The main highways might be clear by now." Her eyes avoided mine, focused instead on the coffee mug she gripped too tightly. I shook my head, sliding my phone across the table to show her the emergency alerts flashing on the screen. "They're not. Even the plows are stuck." Daniel, ever the impatient one, leaned forward, his jaw set. "We have to get to Crescent Lake today. This meeting can't wait." His urgency bordered on desperation, and I felt a flicker of curiosity mixed with unease. What could be so critical that it overshadowed the storm trapping us here? I thought back to the late-night conversation I'd had with Helen, my closest friend and confidant, whose wisdom had guided me through countless storms, both literal and figurative. She'd said, "Sometimes the right lesson comes when they least expect it." Her words I echoed in my mind as I studied my daughter and her husband, their faces taut with ambition. "What's this meeting about?" I asked, keeping my tone light, almost naive. Rebecca hesitated, her eyes flickering with something, uncertainty perhaps, or calculation. Then, as if deciding honesty might sway me, she spoke. "It's about waterfront development. A group of investors is eyeing properties around Crescent Lake for luxury vacation homes. Daniel's presenting our company's vision this weekend." Her voice carried a mix of pride and urgency, but beneath it, I sensed a deeper fear of failure. I nodded, sipping my coffee to buy time, letting the warmth of the mug steady my thoughts. "And these investors, are they only meeting with your company?" Daniel shifted in his seat, discomfort flashing across his face. "There are competitors," he admitted, his tone grudging. "3 other development firms are presenting concepts. But we had the earliest slot, which usually leaves the strongest impression." "Sounds like a big deal," I said, my voice calm but my mind racing. Rebecca leaned forward, her eyes bright with intensity. "It's everything, Mom. This project could put us on the map nationally. We're talking about a $30 million development." Her words were heavy with the weight of her dreams. And for a moment, I saw the young girl who used to dream of building castles in the sand at the lake, now chasing a different kind of empire. I nodded thoughtfully, letting the silence stretch. Well, the roads to Crescent Lake will clear eventually, probably by tomorrow. Rebecca's composure shattered, her voice rising with a mix of frustration and panic. Tomorrow's too late. By then, Marshall Development will have swooped in and stolen our investors. Her words stung, revealing how little faith she had in patience, in timing, in me. I leaned back, considering my next move. Helen and I had strategized for a moment like this, though we never imagined a blizzard would set the stage so perfectly. I might be able to help, I said slowly, watching their faces light up with a predatory intensity that made my stomach twist. There's one way to get to Crescent Lake today. Their attention snapped to me, sharp and hungry. The lake property next to Crescent Lake has a private access road, I explained, keeping my voice steady. It's at a lower elevation, more sheltered from the snowdrifts. With the right vehicle, it might be passable. Daniel was already reaching for his phone, his fingers moving with the speed of someone who saw opportunity and seized it without hesitation. I'll call a car service with forward ticket drive. That won't work, I interrupted, my voice firm. It's private property. The road isn't on GPS. You need permission and gate access. Then who? Daniel's tone was sharp, impatient. I can get you access, I said, letting the words hang in the air. Rebecca's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering in their depths. How? This was it, the moment Helen and I had planned for, though I hadn't anticipated how perfectly the storm would align our stars. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the truth I was about to reveal. Because I own it. Silence crashed over the kitchen, broken only by the faint drip of melting snow from the eaves outside. Rebecca's mouth opened, then closed, her face a mask of shock. You what? She finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. The Pine Haven property on Whitefish Bay, I said calmly. It borders Crescent Lake to the north. Your father inherited it from his uncle Walter in the 80s. Daniel's expression shifted from confusion to calculation in an instant, his mind already spinning with possibilities. That's impossible, he said, though his tone suggested he was already reassessing everything he thought he knew about me. That property is worth just over $2 million, according to the last assessment. Yes, I know, I finished for him, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. Rebecca's face had gone pale, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the table. But you were going to move to a retirement home. You said Dad left you just enough for repairs. I never said that, I corrected gently, meeting her gaze. You assumed it. Rising from my chair, I crossed to the hall closet and retrieved a folder I'd kept tucked away for years. In returning to the table, I placed it between them. Here's the deed, Osaragansi Quatin, the most recent survey and the property tax statements. They passed the papers between them, their expressions shifting from shock to disbelief, as if the documents were rewriting their understanding of me. The cabin itself is modest, I continued, my tone casual, though my heart pounded with the weight of this moment. But it sits on 12 acres with 800 feet of lakefront. The rental income goes into a separate account I use for maintenance and improvements. Daniel found his voice first, his businessman's instincts kicking in. Why didn't you tell us about this? His tone wasn't accusatory, but there was an edge to it, as if he felt cheated out of a secret that could have been leveraged. Why would I replied, meeting Rebecca's eyes directly. It wasn't relevant to our relationship. A mother shouldn't have to prove her worth to her daughter with a balance sheet. The words landed like a stone in still water, rippling through the room. Rebecca's face flushed, a fleeting look of shame crossing her features before she masked it with a tight-lipped nod. Daniel cleared his throat, his businessman mode reactivating. About that access road, I'll call my property manager to clear it and meet you at the gate, I said, cutting him off. He has a snowplow attachment for his truck, but first we need to have an honest conversation. For the next hour, we spoke more openly than we had in years. I laid bare my feelings, my voice steady, but laced with the pain I'd carried for too long. I have no intention of leaving my home, I told him. I'm fully capable of managing my affairs, and I expect to be treated with respect, not as a burden or an obstacle to your ambitions. Rebecca's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and for the first time I saw a crack in her carefully constructed armor. I don't need your financial support, I continued. What I need is my daughter back, the one who once valued family above profit margins. Rebecca's tears finally spilled over, her voice trembling. Mom, I didn't realize. With Dad gone, I thought you needed us to take control. Her words were a confession, raw and unguarded. Daniel and I just wanted to make sure you were taken care of. By taking my home for your development project? I asked gently, the question cutting deeper than I intended. Her silence spoke volumes, a confirmation of the fears I'd harbored. Daniel, ever the opportunist, couldn't resist. The property at Whitefish Bay. Have you considered its development potential? The return could be... Daniel, Rebecca snapped, her voice sharp enough to silence him. To my surprise, he backed down, his expression chastened. I made the call to my property manager, who confirmed he could clear the access road within 2 hours. As we waited, an uneasy truce settled over the house. Rebecca helped me wash the breakfast dishes, a small gesture that felt monumental after years of distance. Her hands moved methodically, scrubbing plates as if trying to wash away the tension between us. Daniel, meanwhile, paced the living room, making calls to reschedule their presentation for later that evening. When the property manager called to confirm the road was clear, I handed Rebecca a set of keys I'd kept in Gerald's old desk. The gate code is 1978, I told her, watching her face closely. The year you were born. Something flickered in her eyes, recognition perhaps, or a memory of the mother I'd always been, the one who tucked her in at night and braided her hair before school. The cabin will be cold, I continued. The thermostat's by the kitchen door, and there's firewood on the back porch. The investors won't expect luxury given the weather emergency. You're not coming with us? Rebecca asked, her voice tinged with genuine surprise. No, I said firmly. This is your business opportunity. I'm staying here in my home, where I belong. Before they left, Rebecca hugged me, an awkward gesture that carried the weight of unspoken apologies. I'm sorry, Mom, she whispered, her voice breaking. For everything. It wasn't enough, not yet, but it was a start, a fragile thread of hope in a tapestry of strained connections. As they drove off in my Subaru, Daniel insisting on renting a luxury SUV once they reached Crescent Lake, I called Helen to update her. Perfect timing, she chuckled, her voice warm with mischief. That blizzard was divine intervention. Maybe, I said, gazing out at the snow-covered trees, the sunlight glinting off their icy branches. Or maybe just a reminder that some forces are beyond our control. Do you think this changed anything? Helen asked, her tone sobering. Time will tell, I replied. At least now they know I won't be pushed around. 3 days later, Rebecca called, her voice buoyant with triumph. Their presentation had gone exceptionally well, largely because they were the only developers who'd managed to reach the investors during the storm. The exclusivity of arriving via the private access road had left a lasting impression. The investors want to see the entire area, she said, her tone hesitant, including your property. They're wondering if the parcels could be developed together. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. My property isn't for sale, Rebecca. I know, Mom, she said quickly. I told them that. Actually, I told them it belongs to my mother, who taught me the value of holding on to what matters, and that some things aren't for sale at any price. Her words carried a sincerity I hadn't heard in years, and for the first time in too long, I felt a spark of pride in my daughter. The following weekend, Rebecca returned alone. No Daniel, no paperwork, no hidden agenda. She brought homemade soup, store-bought from the gourmet market, but the thought warmed me more than the broth. We sat together flipping through old photo albums, laughing over memories of Gerald teaching her to fish at the lake, of summer picnics and winter sledding. I don't think I ever thanked you, she said as the evening shadows lengthened, for coming to get us during the blizzard. After how we treated you, you could have left us stranded. That's not how family works, I said simply, my heart full despite the lingering ache. She nodded, a quiet understanding dawning in her eyes. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a beginning, a tentative step toward rebuilding what had been lost. The lakefront property had opened her eyes, but I hoped something deeper was taking root. Rebecca was starting to see me not as an asset to be managed or a liability to be mitigated, but as a person, a mother, deserving of dignity and respect. Daniel still occasionally mentioned development opportunities, his voice tinged with the old hunger, but the predatory gleam in his eyes had dulled, replaced by a grudging respect for my independence. Last month, I invited them to spend a weekend at the lake cabin, not for business, but for family. To my surprise, they accepted. Watching Rebecca skip stones across the water, her laughter echoing like it did when she was a child, I realized that standing my ground wasn't about winning a battle. It was about creating space for something better to grow. The snow that had nearly torn us apart had long since melted, but its lesson lingered, as clear as the lake's still surface. True wealth lies not in property or profit, but in relationships strong enough to weather any storm. 2 weeks later, the snow had melted into muddy slush along the roadsides, and life seemed to settle back into its familiar rhythm. But the fragile peace was an illusion, and deep down, I knew it couldn't last. I was tending to my African violets in the sunroom, their delicate purple petals a quiet comfort, when the doorbell rang. The clock read 10:15 a.m., too early for the mail, too late for the newspaper. I opened the door to find a woman in her 30s, her polished appearance and leather portfolio screaming professionalism. "Mrs. Wilson? Martha Wilson?" Her smile was practiced, pleasant but devoid of warmth. "I'm Vanessa Clark from Sunset Transitions. Your daughter scheduled a home evaluation today." My grip tightened on the doorframe, shock rendering me momentarily speechless. "I'm sorry, what kind of evaluation?" Vanessa consulted her tablet, her eyes already scanning my entryway as if appraising its value. "Senior Transition Services. We help families organize, downsize, and prepare homes for sale while coordinating moves to retirement communities. The appointment was set for 10, but I'm running a bit behind. I hope that's not an issue." My chest tightened, anger simmering beneath the surface. So this was Rebecca's new tactic, bypassing my refusals by sending in a professional to pressure me. "There's been a misunderstanding," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. "I haven't agreed to any evaluation. My daughter made this appointment without my knowledge or consent." Vanessa's smile faltered, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face. "Oh, well, this is awkward." She lowered her voice as if sharing a secret. "This happens sometimes. Family members often have different timelines for these transitions. Perhaps I could do a quick walkthrough while I'm here." "No obligation." "No, thank you," I said, channeling Helen's advice to be direct. "I'm not selling my home or moving to a retirement community. My daughter doesn't speak for me in these matters." Vanessa's expression shifted, annoyance briefly masquerading as concern. "Mrs. Wilson, I understand this is difficult. Change is scary at any age, but especially, it's not about fear," I interrupted, my voice steady now. "It's about autonomy. I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions about where and how I live." She tried one last time, her tone patronizing. "Your daughter mentioned safety concerns." "My daughter is mistaken," I said, my patience wearing thin. "Thank you for your time, Miss Clark." I closed the door gently but firmly, leaning against it as my heart pounded. The audacity of it, Rebecca sending a stranger to my home without so much as a conversation, left me reeling. I had barely collected myself when my phone rang. Rebecca's name flashed on the screen, and I answered, keeping my voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside. "Mom, Vanessa should be there by now. She'll help you sort through." "She was here," I said, cutting her off. "I sent her away." A beat of silence. "You what?" "Rebecca, we've discussed this. I'm not selling my home. You had no right to send someone here without telling me." My voice trembled now, not with fear, but with the weight of betrayal. "Mom, be reasonable," she said, her tone hardening. "Vanessa is a professional. She could have helped you see how much better off you'd be." "By pressuring me into a decision I've already rejected," I snapped, my composure fraying. "This has to stop, Rebecca. I will not be manipulated." "It's not manipulation," she shot back. "It's caring. Why can't you understand we're trying to help? If you truly want to help, start by respecting my decisions." My words were sharp, but beneath them lay a deep hurt. How had it come to this? When had my daughter decided I was incapable of knowing my own mind? Rebecca's voice grew cold. This isn't just about you, Mom. That property is part of our family legacy. Dad would have wanted it put to good use, not sitting there depreciating while you stubbornly cling to the past. The mention of Gerald sent a fresh wave of pain through me, sharp and raw. Don't you dare presume to know what your father would have wanted, I said quietly, my voice trembling with emotion. Gerald believed in respecting people's choices. He never would have forced anyone, especially me, into a life they didn't choose. Well, he's not here, Rebecca snapped, her words cutting deeper than any blade. And someone needs to make practical decisions before you... She stopped abruptly, but the unspoken words hung heavy between us. Before I what, Rebecca? I pressed, my voice low but steady. Become completely senile. Die and leave you with a mess to clean up? Please finish your thought. This isn't productive, she muttered. We'll talk later when you're being more reasonable. The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and grief. Her words confirmed my worst fears. This wasn't about my well-being. It was about the property, about what they saw as their inheritance, as if I were merely a placeholder for assets they already considered theirs. I called Helen immediately, pouring out the morning's events as she listened with growing concern. This is escalating, Martha, she said, her voice firm. Rebecca's bringing in third parties now. Next, it could be a doctor to evaluate your cognitive capacity, or worse. She wouldn't do that, I protested, though doubt crept into my voice. Are you sure? Helen's tone was practical, leaving no room for denial. A week ago, would you have believed she'd send a stranger to evaluate your home without permission? We need to accelerate our plans. Following her advice, I spent the afternoon taking action. I scheduled a comprehensive cognitive assessment with my primary care physician, which I passed with flying colors, reaffirming my confidence in my own mind. I met with my bank to update account access protocols, ensuring no one could interfere with my finances. Most importantly, I consulted Helen's former law partner, an expert in elder rights, who helped me fortify my legal protections. That evening, I pulled dusty photo albums from the attic, their pages a time capsule of happier days. There was Gerald teaching Rebecca to ride a bike, his patient smile as she wobbled along. Family vacations at the lake cabin, her small hand clutching a fishing pole. Her high school graduation, both of us beaming beside her, proud and united. When had things changed so drastically? When had I become an obstacle in her eyes, a hurdle to her ambitions? I paused at a photo from 5 years ago, taken just before Gerald's diagnosis. Rebecca's promotion at the real estate firm, where she'd met Daniel. Her smile was radiant, unguarded. We'd been close then, talking almost daily, her seeking my advice on office politics or reassurance when deals fell through. Had Daniel's influence changed her, or had the seeds of ambition always been there, waiting for the right moment to bloom? I couldn't be sure. The next morning brought unexpected sunlight, both literal and figurative. Rebecca appeared on my doorstep alone, bearing a peace offering of fresh bagels and coffee. Mom, I'm sorry about yesterday, she said, her voice soft with genuine contrition. I should have talked to you first about Vanessa. Cautiously, I invited her in and we settled at the kitchen table, the familiar ritual of breakfast easing the tension between us. I've been thinking about what you said, she continued, spreading cream cheese on a bagel, about respecting your decisions. Hope flickered in my chest, fragile but real. I appreciate that, sweetheart. I still worry about you here alone, she said, her eyes meeting mine. But maybe we approached it all wrong. What if, instead of selling, we consider alternatives? You could keep the house but move into a senior apartment temporarily, just for winters when maintenance is hardest. It wasn't a full surrender, but it was the first compromise she'd offered. I considered her words carefully, weighing the sincerity in her voice against the hurt of the past weeks. That's not unreasonable, I said slowly. Seasonal arrangements make sense for some people. Rebecca's face brightened, encouraged by my response. Exactly, you'd have the best of both worlds. And maybe Daniel and I could help with the upgrades to make the house safer and more efficient when you're here. The conversation felt almost normal, like we were problem-solving together rather than battling for control. For the first time in weeks, I glimpsed the daughter I'd raised, the one who'd once run to me with scraped knees and big dreams. I'd be open to discussing safety modifications, I said carefully. The bathroom could use updated grab bars and better outdoor lighting would help during winter evenings. We could start there, Rebecca agreed, her relief palpable. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a step, a small, tentative bridge across the chasm that had grown between us. As we sipped our coffee, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, we were finding our way back to each other. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the hardwood floor of my living room, a space that had held decades of laughter, tears, and quiet moments with Gerald. I stood in the middle of the room, my heart a tangle of hope and wariness, as Rebecca and I walked through the house together. She'd come over unexpectedly, her arms laden with a bag of bagels and 2 steaming coffees, a gesture that felt like an olive branch after months of strained conversations. As we moved from room to room, her suggestions for updates, new handrails, a brighter light fixture in the hall, maybe a fresh coat of paint, felt practical, not pushy. For the first time in a long while, I sensed a flicker of the daughter I'd raised, the one who used to curl up on the couch with me, sharing dreams and secrets. Rebecca tapped notes into her phone, her brow furrowed in concentration, occasionally pausing to snap a photo of a creaky floorboard or a chipped door frame. Her focus wasn't judgmental. It felt like we were partners in a project, not adversaries. My chest loosened with cautious optimism. Maybe we were finally finding a way to bridge the chasm that had grown between us since Gerald's death. As she prepared to leave, she turned to me, her eyes softening, and wrapped me in a hug. A real one, warm and lingering, not the stiff, obligatory embraces of late. "I'm sorry things got so tense, Mom," she whispered, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "I just want what's best for you." Her words stirred a warmth in me, a fragile hope that we could rebuild what we'd lost. "I know, sweetheart," I murmured, and in that moment I believed her. I wanted to believe her. After she drove away, I called Helen, my oldest friend, whose sharp intuition had guided me through countless storms. "It sounds promising," she said, her voice warm but tinged with caution, like a lighthouse warning of hidden rocks. "But don't let your guard down completely. Keep our appointments with the lawyer and doctor." Her words pricked at my newfound hope. "You think it's an act?" I asked, doubt creeping in like a cold draft. "Not necessarily," she replied. "Rebecca might genuinely feel remorse, but Daniel's influence worries me. Just tread carefully." Helen's instincts had always been razor sharp, and her warning settled uneasily in my mind. 3 days later, that unease turned to ice in my veins. A contractor's truck rolled into my driveway without warning, its engine rumbling like an uninvited guest. 2 men in work boots approached my door, toolboxes in hand. "Mrs. Wilson, we're from Pioneer Home Services," the older one said, his tone professional but detached. "Your son-in-law scheduled a renovation consultation." My stomach churned. No call, no discussion, no respect for the fact that this was my home. The warmth of Rebecca's hug dissolved into a bitter realization. Her visit, the bagels, the collaborative notes. It had all been a ruse, a way to catalog my home's flaws under the guise of care. "I didn't authorize any renovations," I said, my voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. The men exchanged uneasy glances. "Ma'am, we have a signed work order for a bathroom remodel starting next week," the younger one said, scrolling through a tablet. "Materials have been ordered by Daniel Pierce. The paperwork lists him and Rebecca Wilson Pierce as homeowners." Homeowners. The word hit like a slap. My home, the one Gerald and I had built over 40 years, filled with memories of late-night talks, holiday dinners, and his daffodil bulbs planted with trembling hands in his final autumn. They had claimed it as theirs. "This is my property," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. "I am the sole owner. Whatever paperwork you have is incorrect." My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a fury born of betrayal. After an awkward exchange, the contractors retreated, promising to contact Daniel. Alone, I sank into Gerald's old armchair, the worn fabric a small comfort as my heart pounded. The bagels, the hug, the promises. It had all been a calculated move to soften me up, to assess what they could change, what they could control. I called Rebecca immediately, my fingers shaking as I dialed. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice cool and measured, as if she'd been expecting this. "What contractors did Daniel send to my house?" I demanded, skipping any pretense of pleasantries. A pause, then her voice too quick. "Mom, we discussed improvements." "We discussed possibilities," I shot back, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I never authorized work or materials. And I certainly didn't give either of you permission to list yourselves as homeowners." Another pause, longer this time. "That must be a misunderstanding," and she said, her tone defensive. "Daniel probably used our company account for a better rate. These contractors know us professionally." "The paperwork explicitly lists you as homeowners," I pressed, my anger sharpening each word. "This isn't miscommunication, Rebecca. This is misrepresentation, possibly fraud." Her voice hardened. "That's a serious accusation, Mom. We're trying to make your home safer. Why do you fight us on everything?" The audacity of her question stung. "Because you're not listening," I said, my voice trembling with both rage and hurt. "You're not respecting my boundaries or my rights as the owner." "Ownership rights," she snapped, bitterness lacing her words. "Is that all you care about? Your precious house?" The irony was almost too much to bear. "That's rich, coming from the person trying to force me out or take control of my home," I retorted. "What I want is my daughter back, the one who respected me as a person, not an obstacle to her plans." Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. When she spoke again, her voice was cold, distant. "You've changed since Dad died. You're paranoid, suspicious. Maybe you do need a medical evaluation." The threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. I ended the call before I said something I'd regret, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and grief. I called Helen immediately, her calm presence a lifeline. As I recounted the contractor's visit, her voice grew sharp with alarm. "Martha, this is serious. Misrepresenting themselves as owners crosses a line. We need to act quickly." "Act how?" I asked, my mind still reeling. "We need to secure your financial position," she said. "They think you're vulnerable, emotionally and financially. That's driving their behavior." I hesitated. Should I tell them about the lakefront property now? Gerald and I had bought that second property years ago, a quiet retreat we'd kept private, even from Rebecca. "Not yet," Helen advised, "but we need stronger legal protections immediately. I'll call Edward at the firm. He can see you today." By sunset, I sat in Edward's office, signing papers that established a revocable trust for my assets, including both my home and the lakefront property. The trust included provisions to protect me from any claims about my mental fitness, a safeguard against Rebecca's veiled threat. Edward, Helen's trusted colleague, also drafted a cease and desist letter addressing any unauthorized work or misrepresentation of my property. "We won't send it yet," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Sometimes the threat of consequences is enough." That evening, I sat on my back porch, watching the twilight settle over Gerald's garden. The daffodils, his final gift to me, were just beginning to bloom, their golden heads pushing through the earth. "So you'll remember to look forward to spring," he'd said, his breath labored, but his eyes bright with love. I wondered what he'd make of Rebecca now. He'd always seen her ambition as a spark of my own fire, but even he would struggle to excuse this betrayal. The doorbell jolted me from my thoughts. Through the peephole, I saw Daniel alone, his usual polished confidence replaced by something softer, almost contrite. Against my instincts, I opened the door. "Martha, I owe you an apology about the contractors," he began, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "It was a miscommunication in the paperwork." "Misrepresentation," I corrected, standing firm in the doorway, not inviting him in. He winced but nodded. "Fair enough, it was wrong, and I've canceled the work order." He showed me an email confirmation on his phone. "Rebecca doesn't know I'm here." That surprised me, a crack in their united front. "Why the secrecy?" I asked, studying his face for any hint of deception. He shifted, uncomfortable. "Because we've handled this all wrong. Rebecca's struggling." Losing Gerald hit her harder than she lets on. She made him a promise in his final days to make sure you're never alone or in need. She's taking it literally, like your independence is a betrayal of that promise. His words caught me off guard, stirring a pang of sympathy I wasn't ready to feel. Rebecca had never mentioned a promise to Gerald. "Why tell me this now?" I asked, my voice softer but still wary. "Because she came home crying after your call," he said, meeting my eyes. "She said she's losing you too. Martha, we've been too aggressive and it's breaking your relationship with her." His honesty, if it was honest, struck a chord. Losing Rebecca completely was my deepest fear, a wound I couldn't bear to imagine. "What are you proposing it?" I asked cautiously. "A reset," he said. "No more talk of selling or moving. No renovations without your approval. Just family dinners, visits, rebuilding trust." It sounded almost too perfect, coming from the man who'd once dismissed my autonomy so casually. "And the development plans for my neighborhood?" I pressed, unable to keep the skepticism out of my voice. "Your property's potential, your company's interest, those are gone?" He looked uneasy. "Business is business, Martha. Yes, your property has value, but we can separate that from family." "Can you? Can Rebecca?" I asked, my eyes locked on his. "We can try," he said, and for once his corporate mask slipped, revealing a flicker of sincerity. I considered his words, weighing them against the betrayal still burning in my chest. "Trust is earned, Daniel, not promised. Actions will decide where we go from here." He nodded, accepting the fragile truce. "How about Sunday dinner? Here or our place? Your choice." "Here," I said firmly. 6 o'clock. Done. After he left, I called Helen, recounting every detail. "It could be genuine," she said, her voice measured. "Or it could be a retreat, a softer approach, since force isn't working. Either way, a cooling off period is smart. Sunday gives you a chance to gauge Rebecca's intentions. But keep the legal protections in place," she added. "Don't sign anything, no matter how small." Sunday arrived, the air crisp with early spring promise. I spent the morning baking Gerald's lemon pound cake, Rebecca's childhood favorite, the scent of citrus and sugar filling the kitchen with memories of simpler times. The rhythm of baking, measuring flour, zesting lemons, calmed my restless heart. At exactly 6, the doorbell rang. Rebecca stood on the porch, clutching tulips, her smile tentative but warm. Daniel balanced a bottle of wine, his expression caught between resolve and uncertainty. "These are beautiful," I said, taking the flowers. "Your father's influence. He loved tulips along the walk." A shadow of sadness crossed Rebecca's face, raw and unguarded, not the polished grief she sometimes wore. Dinner unfolded with surprising ease. We steered clear of landmines, talking instead about a documentary Rebecca loved, Daniel's brother's new baby, my garden club's plant sale. For fleeting moments, it felt like family again, like the days when Rebecca would burst through the door, her laughter filling the house. But as I served the cake, her posture shifted, shoulders squared, eyes focused, her business mode activated. "Mom," she began, her voice measured, "I want to apologize properly. The senior living suggestions, the contractors, it was too much, too fast. We didn't consider your feelings enough." Her words sounded rehearsed but not hollow. I nodded, letting her continue. "I worry about you being alone," she said, her voice softening. "After Mrs. Harmon's fall next door." "Margaret fell because of medication errors," I interjected gently. "Not because she lived independently." "I know," Rebecca conceded, "but I just want you safe." "Rebecca," I said, my voice steady but kind, "I understand your concern, but there's a difference between concern and control." She flinched and Daniel shifted beside her. She took a breath. "You're right, we crossed boundaries. So I have a new idea, no pressure, just something to consider." I raised an eyebrow, waiting. "Willow Creek Cottages, a new development near us. They're independent homes, real houses with yards, kitchens, but with optional services like maintenance. It's not institutional." It was a better pitch than Morningside Village, but it still assumed I'd leave my home. "I'm not interested in moving," I said carefully. "Just visit the model home," she urged, her voice earnest. "It's beautiful, modern, accessible. If you hate it, I'll drop it completely." I studied her, searching for the truth behind her words. Was this a genuine compromise or another step in their plan? One visit, I agreed. No paperwork, no pressure. Relief washed over her face. Thank you. That's all I'm asking. The evening ended warmly, Rebecca's hug lingering as she whispered, I miss you, Mom. I miss how things were. Her vulnerability cracked my defenses, and I saw the little girl who once sought my comfort. I miss you too, sweetheart, I replied, my voice thick. After they left, I sat in the quiet, emotions swirling, hope, fear, love, and caution all tangled together. The visit to Willow Creek Cottages the next Saturday was pleasant enough. The homes were lovely, with thoughtful accessibility features woven into elegant designs. Residents gardened and chatted, their lives vibrant and independent. What do you think? Rebecca asked, her eyes bright as we toured a model home. It's well designed, I admitted, touching a smooth maple countertop. I see the appeal, but it's not for me to... Her face fell. Then what's holding you back? Choice, I said simply. My home is more than walls. It's 40 years of memories. Your father, you, our life. It's my garden, the creeks I know by heart. But more than that, it's my autonomy, my right to decide. Her expression wavered between frustration and reluctant understanding. I just want you safe, she said. I know, I replied, but safety isn't just physical. It's knowing I control my own life. She nodded slowly. Will you keep it as an option for the future? If circumstances change, I'll consider it, I promised, a small concession. The next 2 weeks brought a fragile peace. Rebecca called regularly, our talks light and careful. Daniel sent a handyman to fix my faucet with my permission, a small but meaningful gesture. Slowly, I began to hope we were rebuilding something real. Even Helen, ever skeptical, noted the shift. Just keep your boundaries, she warned. Reconciliation doesn't mean surrender. I held on to that advice, balancing hope with vigilance, as I navigated this delicate dance with my daughter, determined to reclaim the bond we'd lost without losing myself in the process. On a dreary Tuesday afternoon, the rain pelted the windows of my home with a relentless rhythm, mirroring the storm brewing in my heart. I just returned from a routine doctor's visit, one that had gone smoothly, leaving me with a quiet sense of reassurance about my health. But that fragile calm shattered the moment I pulled into my driveway and spotted an unfamiliar silver sedan parked there, its door adorned with a discreet magnetic sign, Comprehensive Senior Evaluations. My stomach tightened. Something was wrong. As I approached my front porch, I saw Rebecca, my daughter, standing there, deep in conversation with a middle-aged man in a crisp blazer. The sight of her froze me in place, but it was her reaction to my arrival that sent a chill through me. Her eyes widened, guilt flickering across her face like a sudden crack of lightning. Mom, you're home early, she stammered, her voice tinged with unease. I thought your appointment was until 3. The doctor was ahead of schedule, I replied, my tone cool and measured, though my pulse quickened. My gaze darted between Rebecca and the stranger. What's going on here? The man stepped forward, extending his hand with a practiced smile. Mrs. Wilson, I'm Dr. Gabriel Mercer. I'm here to conduct a home safety and cognitive evaluation. The words hit me like a physical blow. Cognitive evaluation? My blood ran cold, and a wave of betrayal surged through me, sharp and suffocating. I didn't take his hand. Instead, I turned to Rebecca, my voice steady despite the anger rising like floodwaters. A cognitive evaluation? For what purpose, exactly? Rebecca jumped in, her words tumbling out too quickly. It's just a standard assessment, Mom, for insurance purposes. To make sure everything's in order. I cut her off, my voice sharp. To make sure I'm not losing my mind, you mean? To build a case that I'm incompetent to manage my own affairs? To Mercer shifted uncomfortably, his professional demeanor faltering. Mrs. Wilson, these evaluations are quite routine. Many families find them reassuring. Reassuring? I snapped, my hands trembling with barely contained rage. I haven't consented to any evaluation, and I'd like you to leave my property immediately. He glanced at Rebecca, whose face had paled to a ghostly white. Perhaps we could reschedule. There will be no rescheduling, I interrupted, my voice like steel. My daughter has no authority to arrange cognitive evaluations without my consent. The air grew thick with tension. After an awkward pause, Dr. Mercer nodded, handed Rebecca his business card, and retreated to his car. I unlocked my front door, refusing to meet my daughter's eyes, my hands shaking not just with anger, but with a deep, aching disappointment. The betrayal cut like a knife, slicing through the trust I'd thought we shared. "Mom, please," Rebecca said, following me inside, her voice pleading. "It's not what you think." I turned to face her, no longer hiding the hurt that clawed at my chest. "Then what is it, Rebecca? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you arranged for a stranger to evaluate my mental competence behind my back, all while pretending to respect my autonomy." "It's just a precaution," she insisted, her voice wavering. "The insurance company recommended—" "What insurance company?" I demanded. "I haven't changed my policy." She faltered, her eyes darting away. The the company we were considering for the cottage at Willow Creek. They offer a discount if—" "Stop lying to me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "There is no insurance requirement. You're building a case to challenge my competence, to take control of my property and my life." "That's not true," she protested, but her gaze slid away again, confirming my suspicions. I'd seen the paperwork in Dr. Mercer's hand, a capacity evaluation for guardianship consideration. The words burned in my mind, each one a fresh wound. "Do you think I'm blind as well as senile?" I asked, my voice trembling with the weight of her betrayal. Rebecca's composure cracked, her face flushing with a mix of anger and shame. "Mom, you're being so stubborn about everything. We're trying to help you. Dad would have wanted—" "Don't you dare invoke your father in this scheme," I said, my voice soft but laced with fury. "Gerald believed in dignity and respect. He would be ashamed of these tactics." Her face crumpled, a mix of embarrassment and defiance. "You're twisting everything. Daniel and I are looking out for your best interests. Someone has to make practical decisions before—" "Before what?" I cut in, my heart pounding. "Before I die and you lose your chance at my property? Is that what this is really about?" "God, Mom, not everything is about your precious house," she snapped, but her words lacked conviction. "Then why the obsession with moving me out of it?" I pressed. "Why the contractors presenting themselves as owners? Why the cognitive evaluation that could lead to declaring me incompetent?" Rebecca had no answer. Her silence was louder than any protest, a damning admission of her intentions. The room felt suffocating, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me. "I think you should leave," I said finally, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "We need some distance while I reconsider our relationship." "Mom," she began, her voice breaking, but I held up a hand. "I mean it, Rebecca. Go." She left, and the silence that followed was deafening. Alone in my home, I called my friend Helen, tears streaming down my face as the full weight of the betrayal hit me. After 5 years of widowhood, I thought I'd known loneliness, but this deliberate undermining by my only child, introduced me to a new kind of isolation, raw and unrelenting. Helen arrived within the hour, her practical nature set aside as she enveloped me in a fierce hug. "I'm so sorry, Martha," she murmured, her voice thick with empathy. "You didn't deserve this." "What kind of daughter arranges a cognitive evaluation without even discussing it?" I asked, my voice breaking as I sank onto the sofa. "Am I so unreasonable that this seemed necessary?" Helen sat beside me, her arm around my shoulders. "This isn't about you being unreasonable. It's about control. Rebecca and Daniel have convinced themselves they know what's best, and they're willing to use any means to achieve it, even if it means having you declared incompetent." "Incompetent," I repeated bitterly, wiping away tears. "Which would never succeed. My medical workup shows I'm perfectly sharp. The trust we set up has ironclad capacity provisions." "Exactly," Helen said, her tone firm. "They're grasping at straws. But it's not even about the legal ramifications, is it? It's the betrayal, the sneaking around, the lies." I nodded, the deeper wound aching in my chest. "What do I do now, Helen? How do I move forward from this?" She squeezed my hand, her eyes steady. "You protect yourself, not just legally, but emotionally. You can't keep riding this roller coaster of reconciliation and betrayal. Distance might be wise." "I need to be transparent about my financial situation," I said, conviction growing as my emotions settled into clarity. "No more secrets. If Rebecca and Daniel think I'm financially vulnerable, That misperception needs to end. The lakefront property, Helen said, understanding my intent. Yes, but not as a gotcha moment, I clarified. Just clear, honest communication about where things stand. When, she asked. Soon, I decided. But first I need time to process this betrayal and figure out what kind of relationship, if any, I want with Rebecca moving forward. The rain outside intensified, its rhythm a mournful accompaniment to my grief. For the first time since Gerald's death, I faced the possibility that my relationship with Rebecca might be irreparably broken. What if this can't be fixed? I whispered, voicing the fear that clawed at my heart. Helen's answer was gentle but unflinching. Then you'll grieve that loss too, Martha, and you'll keep building a life filled with people who respect and value you. Family isn't just blood. Sometimes it's the people who treat us with dignity when we're most vulnerable. As dusk settled over my neighborhood, her words sank in. Whatever came next, reconciliation or permanent estrangement, I would face it with strength and self-respect. The fragile older woman they tried to paint me as didn't exist. In her place stood a woman who had loved deeply, lost profoundly, and built a life of meaning. I would not surrender my autonomy, not even to those I loved most. 3 days passed without a word from Rebecca. No calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation. The silence was both a relief and a fresh wound, confirming that when confronted with her manipulative behavior, she had no defense to offer. I spent those quiet days reorganizing Gerald's office, a task I'd avoided since his death. Each folder, each notebook, carried echoes of his meticulous mind. Financial records neatly organized, property documents arranged by date, investments tracked with precision. Among them, I found a sealed envelope addressed to Rebecca, dated just 2 weeks before Gerald's passing. My hands trembled as I held it, my heart caught between comfort and melancholy. Had he meant for me to deliver it? Or had he tucked it away, waiting for a moment when she'd need his guidance most? Uncertain, I placed it in my bedside drawer, torn between respecting its intended recipient and my longing for Gerald's wisdom. On the 4th day, my phone rang just after breakfast. Not Rebecca, but Daniel, her husband. Martha, this has gone far enough, he began, his tone clipped. Rebecca's devastated. Good morning to you too, Daniel, I replied, keeping my voice even. I understand you're upset about the evaluation, but Rebecca was just being thorough. Insurance companies... Please stop, I interrupted. We both know there was no insurance requirement. The cognitive assessment was about building a case for guardianship. A pause, heavy with unspoken truth. That's not, he began, then shifted tactics. Martha, regardless of how you're interpreting events, Rebecca is heartbroken. She thinks you've cut her out of your life. I asked for space to process a significant betrayal, I clarified. That's not the same as cutting someone out permanently. His voice hardened. Space, time, whatever you call it. It's cruel to leave her hanging like this. She's your daughter. Yes, she is, I agreed, the words heavy with pain, which makes her actions all the more painful. So what's your endgame here? Audie admitted, making her suffer indefinitely? The question caught me off guard, but I answered calmly. This isn't about punishment, Daniel. It's about boundaries and trust, both of which have been repeatedly violated. People make mistakes, he countered. Families forgive. Forgiveness doesn't preclude consequences or necessary distance, I replied. He sighed, dramatic and exasperated. Rebecca's birthday dinner is Saturday. The family's gathering at Veritas Restaurant downtown. She wants you there. The sudden shift to social obligation jolted me. Rebecca's birthday. I hadn't forgotten the date, but amidst our conflict, I hadn't considered celebrations. I'm not sure that's wise right now, I said carefully. Things are still raw. It's her birthday, Martha, he pressed, his tone accusing. Are you really going to punish her by not showing up? What kind of mother does that? The guilt he tried to wield was transparent, but it still stung. The kind who's been repeatedly deceived by her daughter, I replied, most recently through an attempt to question her mental competence. For God's sake, he snapped, his professional veneer cracking. Let it go. Come to dinner. Act like a mother for once. The unfairness of his words burned. I've been acting like a mother for 37 years, Daniel. What I won't act like is a doormat. Fine, he bit out. I'll tell Rebecca you refused. That should make for a happy birthday. Tell her whatever you wish, I said evenly. But if you're interested in accuracy, tell her I need more time before social gatherings are appropriate, and when she's ready for an honest conversation, without manipulation, I'll be here. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, my heart racing despite my calm exterior. Daniel's call had been a clumsy attempt at emotional manipulation, but it wasn't entirely ineffective. The thought of Rebecca celebrating her birthday without me carved a hollow ache in my chest. For 37 years, I'd marked her birthdays with care. Homemade cakes, thoughtful gifts, heartfelt cards. Even after she'd moved out, we'd kept the tradition of birthday dinners. First just the two of us, then with Gerald, and later Daniel. Breaking that continuity, even with justification, felt like severing another thread in our fraying bond. I called Helen, needing her grounded perspective. Of course they're using her birthday as leverage, she said after hearing about Daniel's call. It's a public setting where you'd feel pressured to play nice. Classic manipulation tactic. But refusing to attend makes me the villain in their narrative, I pointed out. Martha, you need to decide whether you're making choices based on their narrative or your actual well-being, she replied, her tone practical but kind. Would attending this dinner be healthy for you right now? I considered it honestly. No, it would be performative and tense. Then don't go, she said simply. Send a card and gift if you feel it's appropriate, but protect your emotional health. Following her advice, I chose a simple, elegant birthday card from my collection. Not the humorous one I'd bought months earlier, but one that felt neutral. Inside, I wrote, Rebecca, wishing you joy on your birthday. When you're ready for an honest conversation about recent events, I'm here with love, Mom. I included a gift certificate to her favorite bookstore, impersonal but fitting given our distance. I drove to the post office to mail it, the small act giving me a sense of purpose amidst the emotional turmoil. On Rebecca's birthday, I received a text from Daniel, curt and pointed, with a photo of Rebecca at the restaurant, surrounded by friends, smiling with a champagne glass raised. She's having a wonderful time despite your absence. Just thought you should know. The attempt to provoke guilt was obvious, but it only reinforced my decision to maintain distance. I deleted the message without replying. That evening, alone with a cup of tea and a novel I couldn't focus on, my thoughts drifted to the letter from Gerald. What might it contain? Could his words offer guidance through this painful impasse? I retrieved the envelope from my bedside drawer, holding it for several long minutes, torn between respecting its intended recipient and my longing for Gerald's voice. Ultimately, I returned it unopened. Whatever message he'd left was for Rebecca, not me, no matter how much I ached for his wisdom. The following Tuesday brought a new shock, a certified letter from an unfamiliar law firm. My hands trembled as I signed for it, my mind racing with possibilities, none of them good. Inside was a formal notice. Rebecca and Daniel had petitioned for a guardianship evaluation, citing concerns about my declining capacity to manage my affairs and resistance to appropriate care arrangements. A court date was set for 3 weeks later, with advice to secure legal representation. For several minutes, I sat at my kitchen table, the words blurring as shock gave way to cold, clarifying anger. This wasn't just manipulation. It was a legal assault on my autonomy, an attempt to declare me incompetent despite all evidence to the contrary. With steadier hands than I expected, I called Helen, then Edward, my elder law attorney. Within hours, they were at my home, reviewing the petition with growing outrage. This is absurd, Edward muttered, scanning the document. They have no grounds. Your medical evaluations are pristine. There's no evidence of financial mismanagement. This is a blatant attempt to gain control of your assets. Can they do this? I asked. Just file a petition with no basis? Anyone can file, Edward said grimly. Getting it approved is another matter, but the process itself can be intrusive and stressful, which may be part of their strategy. Wear you down through legal pressure? Helen added, her voice tight with anger. Edward nodded. Fortunately, your trust's capacity provisions are ironclad, and your recent medical documentation creates a strong presumption of competence. So, we fight, I said, more a statement than a question. Absolutely, Edward replied, his expression resolute. We'll file a motion to dismiss based on your documented capacity. We'll request sanctions for frivolous filing, and we'll address the property motivation directly, starting with the lakefront revelation. I nodded, a sense of resolve settling over me. The storm outside had passed, and this one would too. Whatever Rebecca's intentions, I would face this challenge with the strength I'd built over a lifetime of love, loss, and resilience. My autonomy was mine to defend, and I would not let it be taken. Not by anyone, not even my own daughter. The conversation paused as Helen broke in with conviction. Exactly, she said, her voice steady but warm. Edward nodded in agreement, his expression calm yet resolute. Nothing dismantles a claim driven by financial motives more effectively than proving the so-called vulnerable party is not only financially secure, but thriving, with substantial assets carefully managed and deliberately undisclosed. His words carried the weight of logic, a strategy that made perfect sense on paper. But inside me, a quiet resistance stirred, a knot of unease tightening in my chest. This approach felt so combative, so cold. She's still my daughter, I thought, the words echoing in my mind like a plea. The idea of turning our family rift into a legal battlefield left me hollow, as if I were betraying some unspoken bond, even now. Edward's gaze softened, just enough to show he understood the weight of my hesitation. Martha, I know this cuts deep, he said, his tone gentler but firm. This isn't easy for you, and it shouldn't be. But Rebecca and Daniel have escalated this far beyond a family disagreement. They've initiated legal proceedings, pushing for guardianship. That's a line they've chosen to cross, and we have to respond with clarity and strength. His words landed heavily, stirring a mix of resolve and sorrow within me. He was right, but the truth didn't ease the ache. Helen leaned forward, her voice soft but insistent, like a friend trying to guide me through a storm. He's right, Martha. This isn't about punishing Rebecca or Daniel. It's about safeguarding your life, your choices, your independence. You've built something solid, and we're here to help you protect it. Her words were meant to comfort, but they also underscored the painful reality. My own daughter had set this in motion, and I had to act, not just for myself, but to preserve the life I'd fought to maintain. By the time evening fell, Edward had meticulously drafted our responses to the guardianship petition, outlining counter-strategies with the precision of a seasoned attorney. The legal threats seemed contained, at least for now, but the emotional terrain felt like a wasteland. My daughter, my Rebecca, had taken formal steps to have me declared incompetent, a wound so deep it seemed to carve a permanent divide between us. The betrayal was not just a legal maneuver, it was a violation of trust, a boundary shattered in a way I couldn't yet comprehend. How could we ever return to what we once were? The question haunted me, circling my thoughts like a restless ghost. That night, sleep refused to come. I wandered through my bedroom, my footsteps soft against the hardwood floor, pausing now and then to stare out the window. The waning moon hung low, casting a pale glow over the backyard where Gerald's garden thrived under my care. The spring bulbs, vibrant and defiant, pushed through the soil despite the lingering chill of winter. Their resilience mirrored my own, a quiet determination to endure, to grow even in the face of hardship. As I watched them sway in the night breeze, a decision crystallized within me. Edward's legal strategy would move forward, but I needed something more. I needed to confront this head-on, not just through court filings, but through direct human connection. Not with Rebecca, not yet, but with Daniel, the one I suspected was orchestrating this guardianship push with calculated intent. By morning, my resolve had solidified. I waited until the clock ticked past 9, then dialed Daniel's office, my fingers steady despite the racing of my heart. When his assistant patched me through, his voice carried a note of surprise. Martha, he said, the word cautious, almost hesitant. I didn't let him settle into pleasantries. I received the guardianship petition. I said, my tone even but unyielding. We need to meet in person. Today. There was a pause long enough for me to sense his unease. I'm not sure that's advisable, given the pending legal, he began, but I cut him off. This isn't a negotiation, Daniel. We meet privately to discuss a resolution, or my next call is to your firm's partners about your attempt to declare a mentally competent client incapacitated for financial gain. The threat was deliberate, born of knowledge Gerald had shared about Daniel's firm and its strict ethical standards. I could almost hear the gears turning in his mind, weighing the risks. That's unnecessary, he said, quickly, his voice tighter now. We can meet. My office, 3 o'clock. I shook my head, though he couldn't see it. Not your office, the conference room at First Community Bank on Pine Street. 3 o'clock works. He hesitated again, probing. Martha, what's this about? If you're planning some dramatic... I didn't let him finish. 3 o'clock, Daniel. Come alone. I hung up, my heart pounding, but my purpose... Immediately I called Helen, then Edward, to inform them of my plan. Both were uneasy. Helen's voice carried a motherly concern, Edward's a lawyer's caution, but they respected my determination. At least let me come with you, Helen urged, her worry palpable. No, I said firmly. This needs to be direct, without intermediaries, but I'd be grateful if you could meet me afterward. She agreed, though I could sense her reluctance. The hours until 3 o'clock dragged and raced at once, a paradox of anticipation and dread. I chose my outfit with care, not out of vanity but as a shield, a way to project the strength I needed to summon. The navy pantsuit, a staple from my years attending parent-teacher conferences, radiated quiet authority, competent, composed, unthreatening, yet unshakable. I added the pearl earrings Gerald had given me early in our marriage, their soft glow a reminder of his love and my own resilience. Each choice was deliberate, a way to arm myself for the confrontation ahead. I arrived at First Community Bank 20 minutes early, having arranged access to their client conference room through my long-standing relationship with the manager. The room was ideal, neutral, professional, imbued with the quiet legitimacy of a financial institution. As I settled in, arranging my documents with precision, I felt a strange calm, as if I were stepping into a role I'd been preparing for all my life. Daniel arrived exactly at 3, his expression guarded, his usual confidence dimmed by a flicker of uncertainty. He scanned the room, taking in the polished table, the discreet security camera in the corner, and me, sitting with a composure I'd fought to maintain. Thank you for coming, I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. He remained standing, his voice clipped. What is this about, Martha? If this is some attempt to bypass legal channels... I met his gaze, my tone calm, but firm. Please sit down, Daniel. Something in my voice must have reached him because he complied, though his posture was rigid, like a man bracing for impact. I want to be clear, I began, my words measured. The guardianship petition you and Rebecca filed is baseless. My recent medical evaluations confirm I'm cognitively sound. My financial management is meticulous. Your petition will not succeed. He opened his mouth to respond, but I raised a hand, silencing him. I'm not finished. This petition isn't just baseless, it's reckless, potentially sanctionable. My attorney is preparing motions to address it. His jaw tightened, a flash of defensiveness crossing his face. Martha, you're making this unnecessarily hostile. We're concerned about your well-being. Your concern is about my property, I said, finishing his thought with a bluntness that surprised even me. Let's be honest, Daniel, at least here. This isn't about my health or safety. It's about assets you believe should be under your control, the development potential of my neighborhood, the sale of my home. Those are your true motives. His expression hardened, but he didn't deny it. That's unfair, he said stiffly, starting to rise. This conversation isn't productive. Sit down, Daniel, I said, my voice steady but commanding. To my surprise, he did. I invited you here to offer a resolution that avoids a prolonged legal fight, I continued, pulling a folder from my portfolio. I placed documents on the table one by one, the deed to the Pine Haven property, tax assessments, a recent valuation, rental income statements. This is the Pine Haven property on Whitefish Bay, adjacent to Crescent Lake. 12 acres, 800 feet of lake frontage. Current market value, approximately $4 million. His expression shifted from dismissive to bewildered, his eyes darting to the paperwork. I don't understand what this has to do with, he started, but I cut him off. I own it, Daniel, solely and outright. His gaze snapped back to the documents, a flicker of shock betraying his composure. That's not possible, he said almost to himself. This property was a legacy from Gerald's uncle. I nodded, yes, and we've maintained it as a rental property for decades. The income is managed through a separate account at this bank. I could see his mind racing, recalculating assumptions about my financial vulnerability. This property is part of my estate, I said evenly, now protected by an irrevocable trust with clear capacity provisions. Your guardianship petition is not only baseless, but irrelevant. He leaned back, his confidence unraveling. Martha, he began, but I raised a hand again. I'm not finished. This meeting is being recorded as part of the bank's security protocols, creating an official record of my asset disclosure and mental capacity. Your claim is dead in the water. His face changed entirely, the polished businessman replaced by someone scrambling to salvage a misstep. What do you want? He asked, his voice quieter, now stripped of bravado. I want the guardianship petition withdrawn immediately, I said. I want acknowledgement that my home remains mine to decide, and I want a commitment to stop manipulating my living arrangements or financial affairs. He nodded slowly, the reality of his position sinking in. And in return, he asked? In return, I won't pursue sanctions or file complaints with your firm or the state licensing board regarding your role in this. The terms were clear, a fair exit from conflict without unnecessary humiliation. Daniel was sharp enough to see the wife's son, and the threat. I'll need to discuss this with Rebecca, he said. Of course, so I replied. You have 24 hours. After that, my attorney proceeds as planned. The meeting ended soon after, Daniel leaving with copies of the property documents in a shadow of his former confidence. I stayed in the room, the adrenaline fading, leaving me trembling as the emotional weight of the confrontation caught up. Helen arrived 15 minutes later, her face etched deep with concern. How did it go? She asked, settling into the chair Daniel had vacated. About as expected, I said, my voice heavy with exhaustion. He was stunned by the property disclosure, thrown by the recording. He'll talk to Rebecca. Helen studied me, her eyes searching for cracks in my resolve. Do you think they'll withdraw the petition? I nodded. Daniel will push for it. It's the only move that makes sense now, financially and professionally. She hesitated, then asked the harder question. And Rebecca? What happens with her after this? The question pierced me, unleashing a wave of sadness I'd held at bay during the meeting. I don't know, Helen, I said, my voice breaking. I don't know if we can ever come back from this. She reached across the table, her hand warm and steady on mine, anchoring me. Give it time, Martha. Today was about setting boundaries now, about protecting yourself. Reconciliation, if it's possible, comes later. Her words offered no easy comfort, but they were true, and I clung to them as we left the bank together, driving to Helen's home for tea and the solace of quiet conversation. The legal crisis seemed contained, but the deeper wound lingered, a fracture in the bond between mother and daughter that no court ruling could mend. The next morning, Daniel called, his tone clipped but professional, free of the condescension that had marked our recent exchanges. Martha, I've spoken with Rebecca, he said. We're withdrawing the withdrawing petition today. Our attorney will file the paperwork by noon. I exhaled, though the victory felt empty. Thank you, I said simply. He hesitated, then added, I want to be clear. Our concerns about you living alone weren't entirely fabricated. Rebecca genuinely worries. I understand concern, I replied, my voice firm. What I can't accept is control disguised as concern. There was a pause, heavy with unspoken acknowledgement. That's fair, he said finally. Is there anything else? Another pause, longer now, this time. Rebecca would like to talk, not immediately soon, but soon. She's processing everything. The words stirred a flicker of hope, though guarded, tinged with the pain of imagining my daughter's struggle. Tell her I'm open to conversation when she's ready, I said. But it needs to be honest, no agendas, no manipulation. He promised to relay the message, and I ended the call. I stood in my kitchen, gazing out at the garden where spring flowers bloomed in quiet defiance, their colors vibrant, against the earth. The legal threat was gone, my autonomy secured through disclosure and resolve, but the emotional fallout lingered, a hollow ache that no strategy could erase. For days after the petition's withdrawal, I moved through life mechanically, tending to chores, tending my garden, attending garden club gatherings, but a persistent grief consumed the quiet moments. How had we reached this point? What signs had I overlooked? Could trust ever be rebuilt after such a betrayal? The questions gnawed, unanswered, filling the silence with their weight. On the seventh day, the doorbell rang just after breakfast. Through the peephole, I saw Rebecca standing alone on my porch, no Daniel beside her, no papers in hand. She looked fragile, her shoulders hunched against the morning chill, her face uncertain, almost childlike. For a moment, I considered retreating, shielding myself from the risk of more pain. But something in her posture, a vulnerability that echoed her childhood, compelled me to open the door. "Mom," she said softly, her eyes meeting mine briefly before drifting away. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." She entered cautiously, as if the home where she'd grown up had become foreign territory, a place where trust needed rebuilding. In the living room, she perched on the edge of the sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Would you like coffee?" I offered, the familiar question a lifeline in the uncertain moment. She shook her head. "No, thank you." She drew a deep breath, her voice unsteady. "I've been trying to find the right words for days." I settled into the armchair across from her, waiting, my heart a tangle of hope and caution. "The guardianship petition was wrong," she began, her words halting but deliberate. "Completely wrong. I've fired the attorney who advised us on it." I studied her, my voice quiet but firm. "It wasn't just bad legal advice, Rebecca. It was a choice you and Daniel made to try to declare me incompetent rather than respect my decisions." She flinched, the truth landing like a blow, but she didn't deflect. "Yes, it was," she admitted, "and I'm ashamed." The confession hung between us, raw and insufficient, yet a necessary step. "I keep trying to understand how we got here," she continued, her voice trembling. "When Dad died, something changed. I felt like I had to take his place, to protect you the way he would have wanted." Her words stirred a pang of grief for Gerald, for the way loss had warped our connection. "By controlling me," I said, not accusingly but clearly. She winced again. "That's not how I saw it at first. I thought I was helping, keeping you safe from isolation, from choices you might regret. Choices like keeping my home, managing my finances," I said, my tone steady but pointed. "It sounds awful when you say it like that," she acknowledged, her eyes glistening. "But in my mind, it was about security, about making sure you weren't vulnerable." I nodded, a small concession, even if it meant making me vulnerable to you instead. She had no answer, her gaze dropping to her hands, fingers twisted together in silent turmoil. "Daniel showed me the property documents," she said finally, her voice quieter now. "The lakefront place. Why didn't you tell me?" The question carried a mix of hurt and confusion. "You never asked," I said simply. "You assumed I was struggling because it fit the story you'd built. A mother who needed managing, not respecting." She absorbed the words, her expression heavy with regret. "Daniel said you recorded the meeting at the bank." I nodded. "A precaution. I needed proof of my capacity and disclosure." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You shouldn't have needed that with family, not with me." "No," I agreed, the ache in my chest sharpening. "I shouldn't have." Silence settled, thick with shared history and fresh wounds. Outside, the garden glowed in the spring light, Gerald's flowers a quiet reminder of persistence amid loss. "I don't know if you can forgive me," Rebecca said at last, her voice breaking. The petition, the evaluation, it crossed lines that were unforgivable. I paused, weighing my words. "Perhaps," I said, "but I'm your mother. Forgiveness is part of that. Trust, though, has to be earned again." Hope flickered in her eyes, tentative but real. "How? What can I do?" she asked. "Start by seeing me as a person, not a problem to fix or an extension of you," I said. "I'm not your responsibility to manage. I'm someone with my own choices, my own life." She nodded, slow and deliberate. "I understand that now. I want to do better." I met her gaze. Understanding isn't enough, Rebecca. It's about change, how you treat me, how you talk about me, how you include me in decisions that affect my life. I want that, she said, her voice gaining strength. I want to rebuild what we had, or something better, something healthier. Her sincerity stirred cautious optimism in me, a fragile hope that this moment, honest and unguarded, could be the first step on a long road. I found a letter, I said suddenly, the memory surfacing unexpectedly. From your father, written before he died, addressed to you. I found it while clearing his office. Her eyes widened, a mix of longing and apprehension crossing her face. What does it say? I don't read it, I said. It's sealed. I rose, retrieving the envelope from my bedside drawer, and handed it to her carefully, my fingers lingering on hers for a moment. It's yours. Whatever he wrote, he meant it for you. She took it with trembling hands, tracing Gerald's handwriting as if it were a sacred relic. Thank you for not opening it, she whispered. Of course, I said softly. It wasn't mine to read. She studied the envelope, then tucked it gently into her purse. I'm not ready yet, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Whatever Dad wanted to tell me, I want to receive it when I've made this right. The admission revealed a self-awareness that surprised me, a sign of growth I hadn't dared to hope for. Would you like tea? I offered again, the simple gesture carrying a warmth that felt significant in this fragile moment. Yes, she said, a tentative smile breaking through. That would be nice. As I moved to the kitchen, the weight of the morning lingered, a mix of grief, cautious hope, and the long, uncertain path ahead. The garden outside continued its quiet bloom, a testament to life's persistence, and for the first time in days, I felt a faint stirring of possibility, a chance to rebuild, not what was, but something new. In the quiet rhythm of my morning, I stood in the kitchen, the soft clink of porcelain against the counter punctuating the stillnesses as I prepared tea. The familiar ritual grounded me, the steam curling upward like a whispered promise of calm. From the living room, faint sounds of movement reached my ears. Rebecca, my daughter, navigating the space with a hesitance that mirrored the fragile state of our relationship. I paused, my hand still on the teapot, and glanced through the open doorway. She stood by the mantel, her fingers brushing against the edge of a framed photograph, one that captured a moment from a long-ago summer. In it, Rebecca, barely 8, stood between Gerald and me, her small face alight with laughter. We were on a camping trip, the kind where the air smelled of pine and possibility, and the three of us were caught in a shared moment of joy over some silly, forgotten joke. Rebecca's voice, soft and tinged with nostalgia, broke the silence. I remember this day, she said, her eyes fixed on the photo. Dad dropped his hot dog in the lake, and that huge fish leaped up to snatch it. Her words carried a warmth that tugged at my heart, pulling me back to that lakeside afternoon when life felt simpler, when our family was whole. I smiled, carrying the tea tray into the room. You were convinced for years that fish preferred hot dogs to worms, I said, my tone light but laced with the weight of memory. Our laughter came then, tentative at first, like a rusty hinge creaking open after years of disuse. But it was real, a small bridge spanning the chasm that recent events, bitter disputes, legal maneuverings, and unspoken hurts had carved between us. We settled into the living room, the tea steaming in our cups, and for the next hour we wove a delicate tapestry of conversation. We didn't touch the raw wound of the guardianship petition, the one Rebecca and her husband Daniel had once pursued with a cold determination that had left me reeling. Instead, we spoke of safer things, memories of summers past, the community theater production Rebecca thought I might enjoy, the garden club exhibition I was helping organize. These were small, ordinary exchanges, the kind that might seem trivial to an outsider but felt like sacred ground to us. Each word, each shared glance, was a step toward healing, a tentative reclaiming of the connection we'd nearly lost. As Rebecca prepared to leave, she lingered at the door, her hand resting on the knob as if anchoring herself for what she needed to say. Mom, she began, her voice thick with emotion. I know things can't go back to how they were, but I don't want to lose you. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and I saw in them the little girl from the photograph, now a woman grappling with regret and hope. You haven't lost me, I assured her, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. We're just navigating new territory. She nodded, a flicker of relief crossing her face. Can I call you tomorrow? Maybe we could have lunch this weekend? I'd like that, I said, and I meant it. After she left, I sank into my favorite armchair, the remains of my tea cooling in the cup cradled in my hands. The conversation had been imperfect, incomplete. So much remained unsaid, wounds unhealed, questions unanswered. Yet something vital had shifted, a crack in the wall of painful closure that had loomed over us. For the first time in months, I glimpsed the possibility of something new, something hopeful. That evening, as twilight draped my neighborhood in soft purples, I wandered through my garden, my fingers brushing against the petals of blooming flowers. This place, my home, my land, was more than property. It was a living testament to the life Gerald and I had built, a tangible thread connecting me to our shared past. Fighting to keep it had been about more than finances. It was about preserving the emotional integrity of my life, my autonomy, my right to define my own future. My phone chimed, pulling me from my thoughts. A text from Rebecca. Thank you for today, for listening, for the chance to start again. I typed a simple reply. One day at a time, Hachi. It was a nickname from her childhood, one I hadn't used in years, and it felt like a small offering of trust. Healing, I realized, wouldn't come from grand gestures or legal victories. It would come from these quiet, deliberate choices to listen, to respect boundaries, to honor the complex reality of each other's lives. The revelation about the lakefront property had shifted everything. Daniel's manipulative strategies, his attempts to leverage my home for development, had been exposed and dismantled by the financial disclosure Gerald had left behind. But the true path forward lay not in assets or legalities, but in our willingness to rebuild trust, step by careful step. In the weeks that followed, a tentative peace took root. Our weekly lunches were like crossing a frozen lake, each step measured, testing for stability, aware that one misstep could send us plunging back into icy waters. We avoided contentious topics, focusing instead on neutral ground, community events, books we'd read, the changing seasons. Like diplomats negotiating a fragile truce, we moved with polite determination. Daniel remained conspicuously absent from these moments, mentioned only in passing, and I didn't press for details about their private conversations or the withdrawn guardianship petition. This unspoken agreement to compartmentalize allowed us to maintain our delicate balance, though I sometimes wondered what tensions simmered behind closed doors. One Thursday, over coffee at Riverside Cafe, my friend Helen broached the subject with her usual directness. Have you asked Rebecca about Daniel's reaction to the property revelation? She asked, stirring honey into her tea. I watched the steam rise from my cup, feeling the weight of her question. No, I admitted. It feels like poking a healing wound. Helen's expression was thoughtful, her gaze drifting to the river beyond the cafe window. Understandable, but unaddressed issues have a way of resurfacing at the worst moments. I sighed, knowing she was right. Rebecca hasn't mentioned Gerald's letter either. I'm reluctant to bring it up first. You're treading carefully, Helen said. That's wise. But real healing can't happen in the shallow end, Martha. Eventually, you will need to dive deeper. Her words lingered with me, and that evening, an unexpected text from Rebecca stirred the waters further. Mom, are you free for dinner Saturday? Daniel and I would like to invite you to our place. Nothing formal, just the three of us. The invitation caught me off guard. Daniel had been absent from our cautious reconnections, his presence a shadow we'd both avoided. This felt like a shift, perhaps toward the deeper conversations Helen had urged. After a moment's hesitation, I replied, Thank you for the invitation. What time should I arrive? Her response was swift. 6:30. Daniel's making his famous lasagna. I confirmed, then sat in my garden, the spring flowers silent witnesses to my swirling thoughts. Was this a genuine step toward reconciliation? Or something else? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but the flowers' quiet resilience offered a subtle reassurance. On Saturday, I dressed with care, choosing a sage green dress Gerald had always loved, paired with comfortable flats. No need for armor. My presence was statement enough. At their downtown condo, Rebecca greeted me with a cautious hug and a nervous smile. The space felt different, less stark, softened by new throw pillows and fresh flowers on the dining table. Small changes, but they spoke of intention. Daniel emerged from the kitchen, an apron tied around his waist, his expression unreadable. Neither the cold calculation of our past confrontation nor genuine warmth. "Martha," he said, offering a tentative handshake. "Thank you for coming." "The lasagna smells wonderful," I replied, matching his restraint. Dinner unfolded with surprising ease, though the conversation stayed safely superficial. Daniel's brother's new baby, Rebecca's work project, my garden club's spring exhibition. Yet the unspoken loomed large, a presence felt in every careful pause, every glance exchanged between them. It wasn't until Rebecca cleared the plates and brought coffee that Daniel squared his shoulders and met my gaze. "Martha, I owe you an apology," he began, his voice stripped of its usual confidence. "A sincere one. My behavior, our behavior, regarding your home and the guardianship petition was inexcusable." I held his gaze, neither accepting nor rejecting his words. He continued, his hands clasped tightly. "The property's development potential clouded my judgment. I convinced myself it was about your welfare, but I let financial considerations take over." Rebecca slid into the seat beside him, her hand finding his in silent support. "We've been talking a lot," she said softly, "about boundaries, about respect, about what family really means." I sipped my coffee, letting their words settle. "I appreciate the apology," I said carefully. "Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild." Daniel nodded. "I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness, just a chance to show a changed perspective." "What prompted this now?" I asked, my tone direct. They exchanged a glance. "Dad's letter," Rebecca said, her voice trembling. "I read it last week. He knew he was dying when he wrote it. He wanted me to understand what truly mattered. Legacy, love, how we treat the people we care about." My heart quickened. Gerald's clarity had always been a guiding light. "He mentioned the lakefront property," Daniel added. "Not its value, but what it represented. A place where your family connected, where memories were made." Rebecca pulled an envelope from her purse, its edges worn but carefully opened. "He asked me to protect what mattered," she said, tears brimming. "Not assets, but relationships, especially with you, Mom." "Your father was perceptive," I said, my own emotions rising. "He knew you might lose perspective after he was gone." "The letter made me see how far I'd strayed," Rebecca admitted, "from what he valued, from what I valued." Daniel cleared his throat. Now, Rebecca shared it with me. It sparked some hard conversations about priorities, about ethics in business and family. Their vulnerability felt genuine, unguarded. Still, I proceeded with caution. "I'm glad Gerald's words brought clarity," I said. "His wisdom lingers." Rebecca leaned forward, earnest. "I know one dinner can't undo everything, but we needed to acknowledge our mistakes without excuses." Daniel nodded. "The guardianship petition was unconscionable. Using your home as leverage was wrong. Misrepresenting ourselves to contractors was deceptive. There's no justification." His directness surprised me. "And your development plans for my neighborhood?" "Abandoned," he said firmly. "We've redirected to commercial renovations downtown, more sustainable, less disruptive." Rebecca reached toward me, stopping short. "We don't expect immediate reconciliation, just a chance to rebuild trust through actions." Their sincerity seemed real, but recent betrayals urged caution. "I'm open to continuing this," I said finally. "Time will show if perspectives have truly changed." They nodded, accepting my terms. Then Rebecca ventured, "There's something else, the lakefront property." Tension gripped at me. "What about it?" "Not what you think," Daniel said quickly. "We're not interested in its financial value." Rebecca's voice held tentative hope. "When's the last time you visited the cabin, Mom? Since Dad died?" The question struck deep. "I haven't," I admitted. "The management company handles it." "Would you consider visiting this summer?" she asked. The three of us, together, to reconnect with those memories Dad wrote about. The idea stirred a tangle of emotions: grief for Gerald, hope for healing, caution about their motives. "I'll consider it," I said. "Not immediately, but maybe later this summer." They didn't push, and the evening shifted to lighter topics. When I left, Rebecca's embrace was warmer, less hesitant. "Thank you for coming," she murmured. "It meant a lot." "One step at a time," I reminded her. Daniel's parting words lingered as I drove home. "I underestimated you, Martha. That won't happen again." In the weeks that followed, their sincerity proved tangible. Daniel sent documentation confirming his company's withdrawal from my neighborhood's development, redirecting to downtown projects. Rebecca's approach grew more respectful, our lunches evolving into deeper conversations about past hurts and future hopes. By early June, I agreed to visit the lakefront property. We planned a weekend in late June, me arriving Saturday morning, them on Friday, giving me an escape route if needed. The night before, I sat in Gerald's office, surrounded by photos of our cabin days. Rebecca splashing as a toddler, Gerald with his fish, teenage Rebecca on the dock. These memories reinforced why I'd said yes. The cabin was about family, not finances. Saturday's drive was bright and clear, my bag packed lightly but with care. I hesitated, then added a small photo album, a quiet nod to the past we might reclaim. As I drove, I felt a cautious optimism, a sense that the seeds of spring in my garden might mirror new growth for us, fragile but possible, rooted in the slow, deliberate work of trust. The journey to the cabin wasn't just a drive, it was a pilgrimage back to a place steeped in memories, a chance to stitch together frayed threads of connection through the shared tapestry of our past. As I left the city behind, the urban sprawl gradually surrendered to rolling hills, then to dense forest cradling shimmering lakes. Each mile seemed to peel away layers of tension, loosening the tightness in my shoulders, softening the edges of my thoughts. This landscape had always worked its magic on me, its untouched beauty slicing through the clutter of my mind, its vastness reminding me that my worries, however heavy, were but small ripples in a larger stream. The private road to the cabin, though I hadn't traveled it in years, felt as familiar as an old friend, winding through towering pines before opening to a clearing that framed the serene expanse of Whitefish Bay. The cabin itself stood as a testament to care, its upkeep impeccable. Fresh paint glistened on the shutters, vibrant flower boxes burst with color, and the dock stretched out into the crystalline water, an invitation to pause and breathe. Rebecca was there on the porch as I pulled into the gravel driveway, her face a canvas of nervous hope and genuine warmth. She hurried down the steps, her movements quick but careful, as if she feared startling me. "You made it," she said, wrapping me in a brief, tentative hug that carried the weight of unspoken apologies. "How was the drive?" I smiled, feeling the sincerity in her question. "Beautiful," I told her, my voice soft with truth. I'd almost forgotten how this road, this place, can mend something inside you. Her eyes lit up with recognition. Dad always said that, didn't he? That the journey here was as much a part of the experience as the destination. She reached for my bag, her gesture small but meaningful, a quiet acknowledgement of our shared history. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his presence quieter than I remembered. He offered a reserved wave, keeping his distance, a sign of newfound respect for boundaries he'd once ignored. "I made lunch," he called out, his tone warm but unintrusive. "Just sandwiches and some fruit from the market, nothing fancy." Stepping inside, I was enveloped by the cabin's familiar embrace. Knotty pine walls, cozy furniture built for comfort rather than show, and the stone fireplace that anchored the room. It still held the collection of smooth lake stones Gerald and Rebecca had gathered over countless summers, each one marked with a date in careful script. Rebecca paused by the fireplace, her fingers brushing a stone. "Summer '91, she murmured, her voice thick with a memory. "The year I found that heart-shaped one. Dad was so particular about keeping track. Date, place, who found it." I nodded, a smile tugging at my lips. "He loved the details, didn't he? Made every stone a story." Rebecca gestured toward the hallway. "Daniel and I are in the guest room. We thought you'd want the main bedroom." The gesture hit me unexpectedly, a quiet act of consideration that stirred something deep. The main bedroom had always been Gerald's and mine, its wide windows offering a view of the lake, its private deck the setting for countless mornings spent sipping coffee in companionable silence. That they'd thought to give me this space felt like an olive branch, fragile but sincere. Lunch was served on the screened porch, the air carrying the fresh scent of pine and water. Daniel excused himself afterward to check a loose board on the dock, leaving Rebecca and me to settle into Adirondack chairs by the small beach. The lake stretched out before us, its surface catching the sunlight in a dance of gentle waves. After a comfortable silence, Rebecca spoke, her voice soft but earnest. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." I met her gaze, feeling the weight of her words. "I wasn't either," I admitted. "But being here, it feels right, like coming home to something I didn't realize I'd missed." She nodded, her eyes tracing the horizon. "It's strange, isn't it? The cabin looks almost unchanged, but everything else, us, our family, it's so different now." "Not everything," I offered gently. "Some things hold steady, like this place." Her gaze softened, and she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dad's letter, he knew me better than I knew myself. He wrote about how I might lose my way after he was gone, how I might let practical concerns cloud what really matters." I felt a pang of warmth at the mention of Gerald's insight, his ability to see into the hearts of those he loved. "He had a gift for that," I said. "He always saw the soul of things, especially in you." She continued, her words careful but raw. "He wrote about this cabin, not as property, but as something deeper, what he called its soul value. The memories woven into its walls, the lessons we learned by this lake." I smiled at the phrase, so quintessentially Gerald in its quiet profundity. "He wrote about you too, Mom," she added, her voice trembling, "about your strength, your dignity, how he hoped I'd see those qualities for what they are, not mistake them for something less." The words settled over me like a warm blanket, Gerald's faith in me reaching across time, steadying me even now. Rebecca's voice broke as she continued. "I failed him. I failed you. I saw your independence as fragility, your dignity as stubbornness." Her confession hung in the air, heavy with regret. I reached for her hand, my heart softening. "We all lose our way sometimes," I said. "What matters is finding the path back." She turned to me, tears brimming. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I shook my head. "It's not about deserving, Rebecca. It's about choosing what heals us, what brings us closer. Holding on to anger would only shrink me, not lift me up." Her tears spilled over, and we sat in silence, watching a pair of loons glide across the bay, their calls echoing like a quiet hymn. The moment felt like a bridge, not fully crossed, but sturdy enough to hold us. Eventually, Rebecca spoke again, her tone hesitant. "There's something I have been wanting to ask, but I'm afraid it might feel out of place after everything." I nodded, encouraging her to go on. She took a breath, then said, "I've been thinking about your bakery dream, the one Dad always said you'd chase someday, the one you wanted to celebrate at that Michelin-starred restaurant before everything fell apart." The mention of my long-buried dream caught me off guard, a spark of something I'd tucked away years ago. "What about it?" I asked, cautious but curious. "Have you thought about pursuing it now? Not a big commercial operation, but something smaller, something that's just you, your passion, your skill." I studied her face, searching for any hint of manipulation, but found only genuine interest. A daughter trying to understand her mother's heart. "I've thought about it," I admitted, "but starting a business at my age feels like a leap too far." Rebecca's response was measured, thoughtful. "Age doesn't seem like the right measure. It's about energy, passion, the skill you've honed over years. You have all of that, Mom, and more." Her words, free of condescension, warmed a part of me that had grown cold. "Why bring it up?" I asked, genuinely curious. She smiled a little shyly. "Because I'm learning what it means to support you, not to take over, not to decide for you, but to lift up what matters to you." The weekend at the lake ended with a tentative plan to return in July, Rebecca and Daniel for short visits, me for a longer stay if I chose. The cabin, once a point of contention, had been reclaimed as Gerald always meant it to be, a sanctuary for reconnection, a place where wounds could begin to heal. 3 weeks later, I sat in Helen's bright kitchen, a notebook filled with scribbled ideas spread before me. "You're really doing this?" she asked, her eyes sparkling as she read my notes. "Not a full bakery," I clarified, my voice steady with conviction. A specialty business, custom celebration cakes, small volume, high quality. Helen's grin widened. Martha Wilson, entrepreneur at 68. It's bold, terrifying, and absolutely perfect. I laughed, a mix of nerves and excitement bubbling up. It's both, isn't it? Scary and exhilarating, like finding a piece of myself I'd forgotten. Have you told Rebecca? Helen asked. I nodded. She's been supportive, offered to help with the business registration, no strings attached. Even Daniel's on board, suggesting a vacant space in their building downtown. Good location, manageable size. Helen raised an eyebrow. You're okay with them being that involved? I smiled, reassured by their respect for my boundaries. It's a professional offer. Market rent, formal lease, no equity for them. They're keeping it clear. The lakefront property's value gave me the financial cushion to make this leap. Not without risk, but far from reckless. By the end of the afternoon, Martha's milestone cakes had transformed from a distant dream into a concrete plan. October brought the 5th anniversary of Gerald's passing, a milestone I'd once faced alone, cloaked in grief. This time, I invited Rebecca and Daniel to join me at the cemetery, followed by dinner at my home. The visit was quiet, reflective, a shared moment of healing. Over dinner, Rebecca raised her glass. To Dad, who knew we'd need his wisdom long after he was gone. Daniel echoed, to Gerald. I added, to the man who believed in dreams even when they seemed out of reach. My thoughts drifting to the bakery set to open the following week. Later, as Rebecca helped clear dishes, she paused, her expression serious. Mom, that night in the snowstorm, when you came for us after our accident, you knew about the lakefront property's value then, didn't you? I nodded, the memory of that bitter night vivid, walking through the blizzard, feeling abandoned. You could have used it to guilt us, to force us to listen, she said, her voice heavy. Why didn't you? I considered her question, the answer clear in my heart. Because that would have been about control, not connection. I wanted any healing between us to come from real change, not leverage. Her eyes glistened. We didn't deserve that grace. I reached for her hand. It's not about deserving, Rebecca. It's about choosing to see the best in each other, even when it's hard. She laughed through her tears, a shaky sound. You sound like Dad. I smiled. Yeah, the highest compliment. November saw the opening of Martha's Milestone Cakes, a modest storefront painted in warm creams and sage greens. A small display case showcased my work. A consultation area invited clients to dream up their celebrations. And behind velvet ropes, the kitchen waited for me to create edible art. Rebecca and Daniel attended the opening, along with Helen, garden club friends, and curious neighbors. Daniel's support had been steady, helping with permits while respecting my independence. Rebecca's enthusiasm was genuine, celebrating my vision without trying to steer it. As I cut the ceremonial first cake, a replica of the Michelin-starred dessert I'd once been denied, I felt the weight of my transformation. No longer the vulnerable widow they'd once underestimated, I stood vibrant, entrepreneurial, alive. Rebecca and Daniel, once adversaries in our family story, had become allies, their support tempered by respect. Gerald's belief in me, that age need not dim growth or joy, had proven true. December marked the first anniversary of the snowstorm that had exposed our family's fractures. As snow fell again, Rebecca called, her voice urgent but warm. Mom, the weather's turning. Daniel and I are coming to help. Secure the garden furniture. Check your supplies. I smiled, touched but firm. I'm capable, you know. She laughed softly. I know, Mom. We're coming because we're family, because we show up now, especially after last year. They arrived with takeout from my favorite restaurant. No demands, just care. We played board games as snow piled up outside, the wind no longer a reminder of rejection, but a backdrop to our warmth. When the power flickered, Daniel checked the backup systems. Rebecca lit candles, not taking over, but contributing from love. Remember last year? Rebecca said softly, watching the snow. We left you in the cold. I'll never forgive myself. I shook my head. That was another lifetime. We have all changed. Daniel spoke up, his voice quiet but firm. You changed us, Martha. Your strength, your refusal to be diminished. It showed us what family could be. I corrected gently. Gerald's letter opened the door. Rebecca nodded. His words helped, but your resilience, your grace, even when we were at our worst, that's what reshaped us. As they left, Rebecca hugged me tightly. A year ago, I put property before family. I'll spend my life making sure that never happens again. I returned her embrace. Mistakes are stones, Rebecca. The wise build with them, not trip over them. After they left, I watched their taillights fade into the snowy night. Their call confirming their safe arrival home, a small but profound shift from last year's abandonment. The woman who had shivered in that blizzard, believing herself discarded, had emerged stronger, clearer about her worth, more intentional about her years ahead. The lakefront cabin, once a symbol of conflict, was now a place of healing, true to Gerald's vision. My home remained my sanctuary, respected as an extension of my autonomy. My bakery, once a mock dream, was now a thriving reality. As snow fell, no longer a symbol of betrayal, but a quiet transformation, I moved through my home, touching familiar surfaces with gratitude. The journey from that storm to this peace had been winding, but it taught me that life's coldest moments can reveal our deepest strengths, our truest paths, and the enduring power of choosing connection over division.